first started thinking about this building campaign, I thought back to the time when I was a kid. We attended the church down on 3rd and Cypress. And it was a small church. The rooms were small and limited, and so we initiated a building campaign. And it was a small building, 40 by 50, wood frame, a flat roof, set on concrete blocks. So you see, it wasn't anything fancy. But it attracted kids to the church, and it was kids that probably never had been to church before, you know. So it maybe even the first time they'd even heard about Jesus. And so it provided also a space for vacation Bible school, you know, in which we did, you know, small projects and just, you know, had fun and learned about Jesus. As fate would have it, about 50 years later, I ran into a kid or a guy that had attended that as a result of that building program. In fact, he came to work for the same company that I worked for. And I didn't recognize him off the bat, but as soon as he was introduced to me, I recognized the name. And right off the bat, we picked back almost, you know, back up to where we were before. You know, we became distant friends, and we were, you know, we were lifelong friends. You know, until he died, back in 2015. And so we see that building campaigns do have an effect. Some 20 years later, this same church had another building campaign, and it was more than just an annex, so to speak, or a education building. It was a sanctuary, fellowship hall, and you know, education space. And so, and it wasn't built at 3rd and Cypress, but it was built on this land, you know, just to the north of us, adjacent to the north of us. And that's the church that's there today. And we see some 47 years later, it was built in 73. So some 47 or 48 years later, that church is still standing today. And it's still serving, you know, God's purpose. And so whenever I was thinking about this, I thought about two verses or two stories in the Bible. One was the widow and the mite, and the other was the young rich ruler. And in this, the widow gave 2 coins, 2 brass coins, probably worth about a penny. And but she gave all she had. In fact, Jesus said she gave more than the others. And so we look at the lessons learned from these stories, and the lesson I learned from this story is that God's not concerned about quantity; He's concerned about sacrifice. And we don't need to let our money own us. We need to own our money. And then the other was that the widow, being a giver like this, being able to give sacrificially, she was probably a regular giver. And the other story, the rich young ruler, well, he couldn't give away his possessions. And so the lessons learned from this is that God doesn't care about quantity. It's about sacrifice. And so also we don't need to let our possessions own us. We need to own our possessions. And the thing is, probably the rich young ruler probably never given to the point where it impacted his life before. And I think that's why Jesus was able to say that the woman had given more than the others, because what she gave impacted her life much more than what any of the others gave. And so I think that's one of the things we need to look at in what we call sacrificial giving. And so from these 2 examples, we see that giving is a lifestyle. It's a habit that we develop throughout our life. So in considering this, Ren and I, we have to answer one question, and that is, what is our lifestyle? And so in closing, I'd like to say this. I pray that God will give us the grace and the peace to as we pray to Him, how we are to participate in this building campaign.